She thought he was her Uber driver. What happened next transformed their lives forever. Sarah was exhausted. Her eyes were gritty, her back ached, and her soul felt heavy under the relentless burden of waiting tables at a bustling Chicago diner before scrubbing floors in office buildings half her waking hours. The thought of her 8-year-old son Jake waiting for her, yearning for the bedtime story she promised, kept her moving. The streets glittered with holiday lights, but the cold Chicago air seeping through her thin coat felt like another weight on her shoulders, an ever-present reminder of how hard she was fighting to keep afloat. She stepped into what she thought was her Uber, a lift she hoped would finally bring her home. "Where to?" the driver asked, eyes focused on the road ahead, voice deep and steady. She almost sighed in relief. "You can take me to the corner of Elm Street, please," she replied, absently rubbing her temples. Just another day, just another ride home. But something about him felt different. He was older than most Ubers. His hands gripped the wheel with a quiet determination that sparked an unsettling curiosity within her. As they glided through the city, she cried out internally. Why was she so tired? The constant grind, the pressure to support Jake while trying to nurture his dreams, gnawed at her thoughts. She hesitated, reflecting on how she could barely offer him basic comforts, let alone the life she wished for him. Would she ever get past the suffocating fear of simply not being enough? "Long day?" he asked, pulling her from her spiraling thoughts. "Yeah," she chuckled, but it sounded hollow. "Just, trying to keep things together." She found herself spilling out snippets of her life, 2 jobs, a breezy joke that hid the gravity of her situation. His nods encouraged her, and soon she confided her dreams for Jake, the bright kid with boundless ambition. With each word, she felt a flicker of vulnerability, the worry that maybe Jake would inherit her struggles, the fear of what she could not give him. She fought against it, but felt it creeping in, a desperate, gnawing doubt that maybe, just maybe, dreams were too far-fetched. "That's tough," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think he knows? Knows the reality, or knows the dreams?" She laughed again, but it sounded brittle. Her eyes drifted out the window, where the starkness of the city against the soft glow of holiday lights felt like a cruel joke. As they pulled up to her apartment building, she caught a twinkle of hope in his gaze. Just then, he casually mentioned how he'd been an architect, hinting at lost potential haunting him. She felt the tender threads of connection between them pulling tighter, igniting something buried deep within her, a realization that she wasn't alone in this relentless fight. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Suddenly, the warmth of the moment dulled with the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Would this man even remember her? Would he share in her burdens or slip away like all the others? As she climbed out of the car, uncertainty clouded her mind. If only she had someone to reach out to, a mentor, a guiding voice to help her change her world. But she wrestled with the question. Could she trust him enough to take that leap? As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, thoughts raced. No time to lose hope, she told herself. But even as she opened the door, the silence of her empty home echoed around her, and the weight of her choices lingered, amplifying the anxiety of an unknown future. Would everything she'd dreamed of slip through her fingers, leaving just another night of stories she couldn't tell? The room buzzed with impending change, and she wondered if the next chapter was with him or away from him. Sergeant, the lines of fate were beginning to entwine. But would she have the courage to step outside her turbulent world and seize a chance she hadn't yet realized lay ahead, Sarah closed the door behind her, the familiar scent of the old wood and faded paint swallowing her whole. The small apartment felt even more constricted now. Every creak of the floorboards seemed to echo her inner turmoil. She could hear Jake's soft breathing from his room, the peaceful sound of innocence that set her resolve aflame. No more letting doubt seep into her life. She needed to find a way to build a future for them both. With her phone in hand, she hesitated. She remembered the warmth of the stranger's voice, the way it had felt like an unbidden balm on her frayed nerves. Her thoughts turned to his words. He'd been an architect once, creating structures that would stand the test of time. What did it take to construct something significant? An idea? Perseverance? Could she carve a path for her and Jake by reshaping her reality? As she slid onto the couch and looked over the remnants of the day, spilled crayons, unmade beds, a half-finished grocery list, she knew change would require more than just longing. It required action. She swiped through her emails, her finger trembling slightly over a message about a community entrepreneurship class. The thought of being surrounded by strangers made her stomach churn, but inside her, a tiny flicker of excitement ignited. She could learn something. She could apply it to her life. Maybe the architect's wisdom lingered in her mind, not because they were alike, but because each piece of information could be the first stone laid in the foundation of her own design. She registered for the class hesitantly, her heart racing as she hit submit. A surge of uncertainty whirled inside her. What if she failed? What if it only led to more disappointment? But then she thought of Jake. Any chance taken was a step away from the monotonous cycle that threatened to swallow them whole. She had to try, for his sake. The next morning arrived with an unusual fervor. The chill outside echoed her apprehension, but she bundled up, determination sprouting within her as she made her way to the class. Surrounded by purposeful strangers, an electric tension buzzed in the air, one that awakened a dormant part of her spirit. She took a seat, feeling slightly out of place as others displayed confidence that eluded her. The instructor, a woman with a magnetic fervor, began speaking about turning visions into reality, about laying the groundwork and constructing dreams piece by piece. Sarah listened intently, the words reverberating with her own buried aspirations. For the first time, she felt that perhaps those dreams weren't out of reach. The panic of inadequacy still lurked within, but it began to feel more like a catalyst for change than a reason to hide. Encouraged, she began sharing her thoughts in class, her voice growing steadier with each contribution. The exploration of innovative ideas gave birth to possibilities she hadn't imagined before. By the end of the first session, a sense of camaraderie had blossomed among her classmates, their ambitions a shared curtain call of resilience. As the instructor encouraged networking, she found herself mingling, exchanging contact details with other aspiring individuals. "It's terrifying, isn't it?" one classmate commented, trying to gauge her hesitation as she stood on the brink of new connections. "Yeah," she admitted, her heart thumping in her chest. "But what's more frightening is staying where I am." After every class, she found herself lingering, forging connections with others whose struggles mirrored her own. With each conversation, she unearthed hidden strengths and perspectives that reaffirmed her ability to adapt. As days turned into weeks, Sarah began to craft a plan of her own, a small business idea that pivoted around creating personalized bedtime stories for children, weaving in elements of creativity and adventure, reflecting the dreams she had for Jake, and infusing empowerment into each tale. The prospect of turning her passion into something tangible filled her with a newfound exhilaration, chipping away at the fears that had once paralyzed her. However, with every moment of confidence came the resurfacing shadows of doubt. Could she truly make this leap into the unknown? What would it take to transform ideas into reality? And would that unknown architect, a former Uber driver, still be just a fleeting memory or a potential ally on her journey? As she stood at the threshold of a new chapter, her mind drifted back to that fateful ride. The interconnected strands of their lives grew tighter, but she needed resolution. If she were to take this leap, She might need to reach out to him again. Would he remember her? Did he still believe in the dreams they'd shared? With resolve crystallizing within her, she decided to track him down. It was time to confront both her fears and her past decisions. Destiny had nudged her towards this path. She couldn't turn back now. Would she find the support she craved? Or was this leap hers alone to take? With her heart racing, Sarah spent the next few days lost in a blend of excitement and anxiety. Each time she thought about reaching out to the architect, a familiar tide of self-doubt washed over her. What if he had forgotten her? What if he didn't want to be involved in her life? Yet, intertwined with those thoughts was a determination that had started to crystallize within her. She wasn't just carving a path for herself anymore. She was sculpting a future for Jake, one she had started envisioning through her stories. It was a rainy evening when she finally sat down with her phone, the soft patter of raindrops against the window matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. She opened her contacts, scrolling through the names until she spotted his. The memory of his smile ignited a flicker of warmth amidst her growing trepidation. She had saved him under Daniel, a name that felt as familiar as it did distant. After debating for what felt like an eternity, she typed out a message, her fingers dancing nervously over the screen. "Hi, Daniel. This is Sarah, from the Uber ride a while back. I've been thinking about what you said, about building something solid. Would you be open to catching up sometime?" Her thumb hovered over the send button, the weight of her insecurities pressing down on her chest. What if this was a mistake? But a voice inside her whispered that she was no longer the woman who had clung to the edges of fear. Taking a deep breath, she pressed send. The wait that followed felt interminable. Each tick of the clock amplified her anxiety. Would he even respond? Was she foolish to think he would still care? Just as worry began to coil around her thoughts, her phone chirped. "Hey, Sarah. Of course I remember you. It's great to hear from you. I'd love to catch up. When works for you?" The relief that washed over her was electric. She quickly grasped the opportunity, arranging to meet him at a cafe she had passed countless times but never dared to enter. Each detail of the plan solidified her intentions, knitting hope into her burgeoning dreams. As the days crept closer to their meeting, Sarah devoted herself to her business idea with renewed vigor. She spent hours drafting stories, sketching illustrations, and researching printing options, her mind buzzing with designs for marketing materials. Every moment of writing transformed her into a version of herself she had only glimpsed before. The confidence she gained in this creative exercise pulsated through her veins, reinvigorating her sense of self. Yet, the shadow of uncertainty never left her completely. The moment she walked into that cafe, she feared a flood of inadequacy might consume her. Would Daniel see through the polished words of her stories, the enthusiasm behind her plans? Would he dismiss them as mere fantasies? When she entered, the soft aroma of coffee mingled with baked goods enveloped her in warmth. Daniel sat at a corner table, his presence commanding yet approachable, completely at ease with a mug cradled between his hands. As she approached, his eyes lit up like the first spark of dawn, banishing the looming darkness of doubt that had threatened her resolve. "Hi there," he greeted her, standing up and extending a hand that she gladly accepted. His grip was firm. There was something undeniably comforting about it, a reassurance that she wasn't alone in this newfound journey. They started with light conversation, sharing anecdotes about their lives. But as Sarah found her stride, something deeper settled between them. His eagerness to understand her dreams, mirrored by her desperate need for guidance and insight. "Tell me about these bedtime stories," he encouraged, leaning forward slightly, genuine interest sparkling in his eyes. As she spoke, the words poured out of her, a mix of vulnerability and passion. This was no longer just a business concept. It was a lifeline, a way to create a bridge between her dreams and the future she envisioned for Jake. Daniel nodded, his expression shifting from interest to excitement. "You know, the best ideas often come from personal experience. What if we strategize? Let's identify your target audience and how to reach them." The way he engaged with her ignited a brilliance within her, as if the embers of her hidden capabilities were being fanned into flame. She had hope. This wasn't just a conversation. It was the beginning of something significant. But as she worked to solidify her idea with Daniel's insights, nagging doubts still tugged at her mind. With every brainstorming session came the worry that maybe she was out of her depth. Would she truly have the resilience to see this through? As the cafe buzzed around them, lively chats, clinking glasses, laughter, Sarah felt the emotional weight of her aspirations and fears collide. Could she genuinely rely on him for more than just guidance? She was treading into ambiguous territory, one that could yield either support or disappointment. Yet despite the turbulent uncertainty swirling within her, she felt something break through. "Let's do this," she declared, more to herself than anyone else. "Let's create something real." Little did she know that this conversation was only the beginning. The more they dove into strategy, the deeper they would uncover underlying truths about both their ambitions and fears. Right there and then, she confronted her truth. Every step she took was a leap into the unknown, propelled by sheer necessity and waning hope. As the evening wore on and their plans unfolded, a realization dawned on her. She was not merely seeking Daniel's guidance. She was beginning to envision a partnership, a collaboration that could perhaps elevate them both. But as exciting as that felt, it also terrified her. Would the intertwining of their lives strengthen her dreams, or complicate them even further? As she glanced up, catching Daniel's gaze, she felt a rush of anticipation. What had she really hoped for? And was she prepared for everything that partnership might bring? The boundaries of her journey were expanding. She'd stepped into a complex web of possibilities, and she could feel the wind shifting, even if it was still uncertain which way it was blowing. As the soft evening light faded into shadows, Sarah felt a cocktail of exhilaration and fear swirling within her. Daniel sat across from her, animatedly discussing marketing strategies. Yet the more he spoke, the more her insecurities crowded in like dark clouds. She was pregnant with ideas, but would they be viable? Would they resonate with parents as deeply as they did with her? Listening to him lay out potential routes to reach an audience felt like peering into a mirror reflecting a version of herself she had not fully embraced. An entrepreneurial Sarah, one who could craft words into captivating narratives, a mother who could weave magic into bedtime stories that instilled wisdom and wonder in her child. But was she truly ready for this endeavor? Or was it just an avenue to escape a life she felt was slipping through her fingers? Sarah's mind raced as she tried to absorb all that Daniel was presenting. His approach was practical, yet infused with a spark of creativity that ignited her own. When he asked, "What themes resonate most with you?" it struck her that this was a crucial moment, one of self-discovery. What did she want to convey to young minds? "Empowerment," Sarah replied, her voice stronger than she felt. "I want children to see themselves as heroes of their own stories, able to shape their own futures. Stories that teach resilience and creativity." Daniel's eyes sparkled with appreciation. "That's brilliant. We can create characters that embody those qualities. Perhaps a series of stories that highlight different strengths." His enthusiasm was infectious, but a small voice crept into her thoughts. What if you fail? There was no guarantee her stories would resonate, let alone sell. The specter of rejection loomed larger as she envisioned agents and publishers meeting her with politely furrowed brows. She shifted in her seat, the wooden chair creaking softly. What if it doesn't work, Daniel? What if I pour my heart and soul into this and it all falls flat? He paused, choosing his words carefully. Failure is simply a step toward success. Art is subjective, and not every story will hit its mark. But every attempt teaches you something invaluable. Think of it this way. Even the most celebrated authors faced rejection before finding an audience. The truth in his words resonated, yet another fear bubbled up. Was she going to hinge her aspirations to this new relationship? The implication of creating together felt like walking a tightrope, exhilarating, yet perilous. What if this partnership didn't pan out? What if Daniel's vision for the stories conflicted with hers, leaving her to compromise the very essence of what she wanted to create? She looked down, fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup, her brow furrowing in concentration. I appreciate what you're saying, but it's hard to push through that doubt. He reached across the table, his palm open, inviting. Embrace it, Sarah. Let that doubt propel you. Use it to fuel every draft, every edit. Know your worth and trust in your voice. It felt like a challenge, and something inside her stirred. She had dealt with doubt before. Every step toward becoming an author had been lined with it. The hesitation to speak at readings, the fear of critique, the anxiety that had kept her stories buried for so long. What if I choose to go for it? She pondered aloud, emboldened by the flicker of hope she felt in that cafe, catalyzed by Daniel's presence. Would you really support me? More than just guidance? I mean, as a partner? Daniel didn't hesitate. Absolutely. But remember, this journey is yours. I'm here to support, but ultimately, you decide the path. His words enveloped her, and for the first time, Sarah envisioned not just a professional collaboration, but the seeds of a deeper connection, one that stretched far beyond business. Could she allow herself to trust him with her dreams, in all their messy, unrefined glory? As the cafe began to empty, their conversation morphed. They discussed characters, landscapes, moral dilemmas within the tales she wished to tell. Ideas flowed seamlessly, yet the apprehension still loomed, waiting to fracture the newfound connection. Finally, Sarah broke the silence that had settled amidst their brainstorming. If we're venturing into this together, I guess I need to confront the biggest question. What if we clash? What if our creative visions don't align? Daniel leaned back, arms crossed, contemplating. Then we talk. Honesty is crucial. Compromise can strengthen the vision. Growth happens when ideas are challenged. A wave of clarity washed over her. She was navigating uncharted waters, but was not alone. Later that night, as she lay in bed, the echoes of their exchange danced through her mind. She was on the brink of something transformative, but was also aware that it demanded vulnerability, trust, and a leap of faith. How did I let myself get this far? She murmured to herself. With each passing moment, she realized that moving forward meant facing the unknown, wielding her words as both shield and sword, perhaps redefining what it meant to truly build something substantial, perhaps her entire life. But as dawn broke, sending streaks of light through her window, a familiar chill crept in. Just how far was she willing to go? And could the ascent come at the cost of her own clarity? She stared into the chilling morning light, fighting back the emotions that threatened to rise. One question lingered. Would she choose to view their partnership as an adventure or potentially a trap? And Sarah, despite the tension, felt an undeniable urgency. The moment to face her own limitations was at hand. The days that followed erupted like fireworks, brilliant, chaotic, and vibrantly illuminating potential paths. Sarah awoke each morning with a sense of purpose, yet the lingering specter of doubt still curled around her thoughts. The anticipation of brainstorming sessions with Daniel felt exhilarating, but also terrifying. Each discussion nudged her closer to her aspirations, while simultaneously exposing cracks in her confidence. She poured her energy into developing her stories, delineating outlines and drafting characters. Yet with each word she wrote, the questions intensified. Was her narrative truly unique? Did her characters sufficiently embody the resilience she wished to portray? Other authors had left their mark. What could she offer that was new? As she maneuvered through the sea of ideas, she sought refuge in the comforting routine of morning walks. Cradling her coffee, she allowed the rhythmic crunch of leaves beneath her feet to spark inspiration. Yet, the thrill often paused at the thought of sharing her drafts with Daniel. Would he find surprise in her creativity, or perhaps disappointment? One afternoon, as she prepared for their next meeting, the doorbell rang, a jarring development that cut through her meandering thoughts. She opened the door to find Daniel, a mix of excitement and curiosity dancing in his eyes. "I figured it was time we went over some of your ideas in person," he said, grinning. "Let's take this to a cafe. A change of scenery might just spark something new." Sarah hesitated, but she caught a glimpse of opportunity in his enthusiasm. She grabbed her notes, her heart racing at the prospect of revealing her inner workings. Once seated at a small table adorned with an assortment of pastries, she laid out her story synopsis. The cafe buzzed around them, a symphony of conversations punctuating their dialogue like an artist's palette. "Here," she began, pointing to her notes with a shaky hand. "This is the main character, a shy, imaginative girl, eager to explore her strengths through fantastical adventures." Daniel nodded, eyes brightening as she spoke. "What if we tap into her overcoming those fears, essaying even just one chapter where she confronts her hesitations?" Sarah felt a spark ignite within her. His suggestion made her heart race. Yes, she could face her greatest fear, both literally and metaphorically, testing her limits as she conquers challenges. The dynamic shifted. She could feel her emerging confidence intertwining with his enthusiasm. Encouraged, she delved deeper into the story's fabric, weaving in teachings of resilience. Their conversation ebbed and flowed, each idea building off the other like a carefully constructed narrative. There was a newfound dynamism that infused her vision, and though the collaboration felt liberating, Sarah's anxiety simmered beneath the surface. Yet the back of her mind whispered temptations of apprehension. What if she lost herself in this collaboration? Would her voice remain intact? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across their notes, Sarah made a calculated decision. "Daniel, I think we need to set boundaries. I want input, but I also want to protect my vision. It's crucial we discuss our creative wills honestly as we craft together." His expression shifted, a seriousness surfacing amidst their previously buoyant conversation. "Absolutely. This needs to be a partnership, not a power struggle. Our differences can forge something spectacular, but if we chart this out early, it can shield us from conflicts that compromise both our visions." A wave of relief washed over her, crystallizing the moment of understanding. They were in this together, not just as creative partners but as co-navigators on a thrilling yet treacherous path. That night, Sarah slept restlessly. A storm of thoughts brewed as she contemplated the boundaries they had set. Perhaps this was the key to embracing their partnership fully, a navigation between openness and self-protection. Trust wouldn't come instantaneously, but these small steps forward felt empowering. The following days saw Sarah fiercely dedicating time to her stories, allowing herself to pour her vulnerabilities, doubts, and hopes into her prose. With each passing day, her self-doubt transformed gradually into a sense of duty to that little voice nurturing the stories within her. But as she began sending her drafts to Daniel, excitement built, conflicted with fear. Would he embrace her creations wholeheartedly? Or would his critiques cut deep into her carefully crafted self-image? Just as she flipped the last page on her latest narration, a message pinged on her phone. It was Daniel. He would like to meet again tomorrow, this time to discuss her recent work. Suddenly, she was thrust into the precipice. The moment of truth was approaching, and a chilling anticipation coursed through her. Was she ready to confront her creations under his gaze? Would he see her vision as brilliantly as she had envisioned it? As she grappled with these thoughts, a new temptation arose, a doubt even darker than the last. Could she summon the courage to allow him to see her insecurities? Or would she mask her vulnerability yet again? And deep down, Sarah realized that the true challenge lay ahead, one that demanded not only her words, but her very essence. The time had come to peel back layers of doubt and face what was hidden beneath. Would she rise to the occasion or succumb to fear? The gentle aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air as Sarah settled in a corner of the cafe, a bubble of anticipation mixed with anxiety coiling in her stomach. She'd arrived early, clutching her laptop like a lifeline, tapping her fingers against the keys in a repetitive rhythm that could almost drown out her racing thoughts. What had seemed like a productive decision now felt like an arduous gauntlet of vulnerability. Today was pivotal, and yet, the stakes felt unbearably personal. As she awaited Daniel's arrival, her eyes flitted to her screen, the drafts she had tirelessly constructed glowing back at her mockingly, pages dotted with her hopes, the quintessential story she'd poured her soul into. Yet, the notion of revealing these words to Daniel, a potential gatekeeper of her creative journey, felt like standing naked in a crowd. Could he appreciate the nuances? Would he see only the flaws? With each passing minute, her resolve flickered and dimmed, a candle threatened by an encroaching draft. This was more than a simple meeting. This was a potential reckoning with her greatest fears. Suddenly the door chimed, and Daniel walked in, a beacon of warmth amidst her internal storm. His smile, genuine and inviting, momentarily eased her swirling doubts. "Hey, Sarah," he said, approaching with an enthusiasm that contrasted her growing trepidation. "Ready to dive in?" Taking a deep breath, she nodded, seeking to muster an air of confidence that felt increasingly elusive. They settled at a small table by the window, a comforting spot that allowed sunlight to drench the ambiance in optimism. With a quick nod from Daniel, she pushed her laptop across the table, revealing her most cherished draft, the imaginary world she had crafted with so much care. "Here it is," she said, forcing the words out, her voice barely a whisper. Daniel leaned in, skimming the document with quick, practiced eyes. Sarah watched as his expression morphed through concentration, curiosity, and finally settled into a warm smile as he looked up at her. "This is fantastic, Sarah. Your character's voice is so strong. I can really feel her struggle." A swell of gratitude washed over her, but before she could savor it, her insecurities surged back. "But, do you think it's too cliché? I mean, the shy girl discovering herself? Is it even relevant anymore?" she asked, panic bubbling beneath her bravado. Daniel paused, contemplating her question. "I think cliché is a matter of perspective. Everyone's journey of self-discovery is unique, and you have a tremendous ability to infuse personal truth into your writing. Your character's limitations resonate with real fear, and that's where it strikes a chord." For the first time, she felt a shift, a tiny crack in the armor of self-doubt. His feedback was not only supportive but insightful, opening a window to her perception of value. Each word he spoke resonated like a drumbeat, pushing her to reevaluate the very essence of her narrative. As Daniel continued discussing her work, weaving in suggestions and encouragement, Sarah began to engage more confidently. With every exchange, the connection solidified. Her voice didn't just exist. It thrived amidst his constructive critique. It was a realm where an honest exploration born from shared vision emerged. Yet soon her heart pounded as Daniel paused, a pivotal glint sparking in his eyes. "I have an idea," he said slowly. "What if we took this journey a step further? An interactive element that involves real listeners. You know, a podcast or a writing workshop? We could flesh out the characters' arcs live, draw in an audience, and gather their thoughts as they engage with the narrative." The prospect hung in the air, electrifying yet daunting. A wave of exhilaration rushed through Sarah, competing with absolute dread. It resonated with her desire to push boundaries, yet it also felt like standing atop a precipice, an invitation to take a leap of faith. Would she be prepared to face the judgment of not just one person, but many? Could she handle the weight of others' insights alongside her own? The room around them blurred momentarily as she contemplated Daniel's offer. Her response teetered on the edge of her lips, a decision that could very well redefine her journey. Was the reward worth the potential for further rejection? Or could this be the ultimate moment of growth she had been yearning for? The weight of the moment settled heavily on her, the possibilities swirling in her mind like chaotic shadows. Would she dare to soar or shrink back into her comfort zone? As each option loomed large, she understood that her answer to this question would shape not only her story, but the very trajectory of her path as a writer. And as they sat in the cafe consumed by conversation, Sarah realized that whatever choice she made next wouldn't just be about her writing. It would be about embracing her truth amidst the uncertainties of collaboration and vulnerability. The time had come to decide, but her heart raced as she hovered on the brink. Was she ready to not just write her story, but to live it out loud? The tantalizing buzz of opportunity wrapped around Sarah, yet dread loomed near, heavy as a fog. Daniel's suggestion pulsed in her mind, generating an electric mix of fear and intrigue. This was new territory. Stepping outside the safe perimeter of solitary writing demanded an authenticity she had yet to explore. Could she bear the scrutiny of an audience? Doing live sessions might be a great way to evolve the character further. Sarah eventually responded, her voice steadying into a form of cautious optimism. But exposing my work like that, it's terrifying. What if they don't like it? Daniel leaned back, his gaze piercing yet encouraging, and she felt a flicker of her own determination. What if they do? What if they connect with her in a way that fuels your creativity? He probed, his enthusiasm igniting something within her. The thought resonated, a small ember in the heap of her doubts. Engaging an audience could bridge the gap between isolation and dynamic collaboration. What if she could harness the energy of collective thought, weaving her narrative with viewer feedback? It held the potential for deeper exploration of her story, transforming her character from a private creation to a shared experience. Despite the gnawing fear, Sarah's aspiration to grow, both as a person and a writer, contradicted that fear. She bit her lip, deliberating, weighing the consequences against the exhilaration of the unknown. Her internal dialogue crackled with urgency as she considered the implications of Daniel's proposal. "Okay," she said, attempting to mask the tremor in her voice with newfound resolve. "Let's try it. I can't let fear hold me back any longer. I've been playing it safe for too long." A wave of warmth washed over her as Daniel grinned ear to ear, his excitement palpable. They dove back into discussion, brainstorming concepts that swirled in a fusion of passion and pragmatism. She started to see her character not only as a reflection of her own struggles, but as a vessel that could drive conversation and elicit empathy. In the following weeks, the cafe became a sanctuary for their sessions. They brainstormed ideas, crafted outlines, and fostered a creative synergy. Sarah discovered an unexpected joy in the organization of chaos. She began to realize that the interactive format was not just an avenue for growth, but a playground for her imagination. Yet, with each session, as they populated their ideas with engaging dialogues and potential listeners, the specter of self-doubt re-emerged. Sarah questioned her authority as a writer and facilitator. Would anyone care for the struggles of a character born from her insecurities? What if those she sought to captivate were dismissive? The resurgence of anxiety formed like a cap around her burgeoning confidence, threatening to impede her budding momentum. One particular afternoon, frustrated by her escalating doubts, Sarah confessed, "What if I'm just not meant to share my work? It feels like I'm an imposter throwing a party no one wants to attend." Daniel, sensing the weight of her words, leaned forward earnestly. Imposter syndrome isn't just a hurdle. It's a signal that you're venturing into true growth territory. Those feelings mean you're on the edge of something substantial. Embrace it. What's the worst that could happen? As the question hung in the air, the implications ricocheted in Sarah's mind. This was a pivotal moment where she had not only to confront her fears, but also to empower herself through the narrative she was so passionately crafting. Not just for her character, but for herself. She realized that by exposing her vulnerability, she could actually connect with others in a meaningful manner. Determined to confront her apprehension, Sarah recognized this wouldn't simply be about sharing her work. It was a reflection of her own journey, her truth laid bare, whether validated by others or not. Each decision to share would inch her closer to shedding the identities shaped by self-doubt and insecurity. Yet just as she began to inhale the scent of possibility, word reached her that one of the established writers in the local community would be attending their next live session. The abrupt news landed like a cold splash of water, flooding her with a fresh wave of terror. The ceiling of her excitement crumbled, as did the sense of security she'd begun to construct. Would she still have the courage to embrace this new venture? As they wrapped their session that day, the anticipation mixed with trepidation settled heavily on her chest. She sat in silence, staring at her laptop screen, contemplating the gulf between her aspirations and the looming evidence of her insecurity. The moment loomed closer, daring her to show up authentically or retreat into the safety of her self-imposed boundaries. Would she step into the light next time? Or would she hide away in the shadows? The answer lingered, and as she lingered on that precipice, Sarah knew her next choice wouldn't just be about her story. It would be about seizing her moment. Yet the pressure mounted, and she was left holding her breath at the edge of her transformation. Days slipped by too quickly, each one echoing the impending moment that loomed ahead. Sarah found herself caught in a trance, alternating between excitement and dread, trapped in an emotional limbo. The cafe, once a sanctuary, started to feel like a stage set for an impending showdown. As she prepared for the live session, her mind ignited with a whirlwind of strategies, countered by self-inflicted skepticism. "What's the most compelling angle?" she mused, tapping her fingers against the keyboard, but the words on the screen blurred into an indecipherable haze. Every keystroke felt like an admission of vulnerability, each sentence burdened with the weight of her fears. "Maybe I'll present the character as an archetype, one that represents myriad struggles," she whispered, half hoping Daniel would chime in with a nod of approval. Instead, her gaze trailed to the cafe's window, where passers-by moved with purpose, seemingly unencumbered by the anxiety that thrummed through her veins. Daniel's voice jolted her back to reality. "You're overthinking it again. Just go with how she feels. Let that guide you." His presence was grounding, a complex blend of sage and cheerleader, providing just the right amount of support. Yet, why did she struggle to take the plunge? Each time she envisioned the audience, she could almost hear their thoughts echoing back to her. Who does she think she is? Those words haunted her. Sarah could already feel the sharp gaze of critiques and the disdainful whispers clawing at the back of her mind. "I need to prepare a script," she declared, a desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable. "I can't leave anything to chance." But deep down, she questioned if a script could bridge the gap between her insecurities and the authentic connection she craved. "Preparation is good, but don't lose the essence of who you are in the process," Daniel cautioned, anticipation dancing in his eyes. "You don't want to come off as rehearsed. Be real." What does being real look like? The question rolled off her tongue, heavy with doubt. If she stripped away the facade of flawless delivery, what remained would be her raw uncertainties. But what if she laid herself bare and found no one cared? It was a risk that sent a ripple of nausea through her stomach. Each passing moment took her further away from the self-assured image she used to don. It felt like she was bracing for a storm, the curtains straining under the weight of an impending downpour. Yet amidst the chaos brewing in her mind, a small voice urged her to embrace the uncertainty. Perhaps the storm was a necessary part of her growth, a powerful catalyst to push her beyond the comfortable shadows. As the day drew nearer, the comfort of avoidance felt fleeting. On the afternoon of the session, adrenaline surging at an alarming rate, Sarah stood in front of the mirror, observing the reflection of a woman teetering on the brink of transformation. She practiced her opening lines, but the rehearsed cadence failed to capture the authenticity she so desperately sought. With heart pounding wildly, she finally whispered, "I am enough." And the words stamped a spark of courage that flickered inside her. Every ounce of fear that had clouded her purpose began to recede as she focused on what lay ahead. dread turned into determination, and she reminded herself that her character's journey mirrored her own. It was real. It was significant. Daniel arrived, his enthusiasm carrying a contagious weight. "Ready for this, Sarah?" "Ready as I'll ever be," she responded, the blend of confidence and trepidation swirling within her. As the cafe filled with eager listeners, the weight of their collective expectancy settled around her like a thick fog. Sarah glanced at Daniel, who offered an encouraging nod, his trust grounding her nerves. She took a deep breath, a new resolve coursing through her veins. The microphone felt foreign in her hands, both liberating and constricting. The familiar hum of self-doubt rampaged within her, yet purpose balanced it delicately. "This isn't just about the audience," she reminded herself. "It's about sharing a piece of me." As she approached the moment of truth, a pulse of clarity broke through. She stepped forward, ready to embrace the fear, prepared to stand in the light of vulnerability, ready to connect with those before her. The storm inside had finally reached a crescendo, and she could either be swept away or harness its power. Would Sarah seize this moment, breaking free as the storm turned to clear skies? Or would the confidence built from doubt unravel in the presence of experienced eyes? Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the weight of expectation collided with her resolve, and the world held its breath along with her. The words hung suspended in the air, a taut string ready to snap. Sarah's heart thrummed in time with the lingering silence, and as she reached the precipice of her revelation, something unexpected happened. Instead of a flood of well-rehearsed lines, a wave of instinct surged through her, pushing the carefully crafted script aside. It was a revelation. The power of authenticity would outweigh the polished performance she had been clutching so tightly. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, her voice quavering slightly, but firm. "Today, I'm here to share a story, not just of a character, but of me, a woman struggling with doubt and fear, just like many of you." The honesty in her statement felt like a raw wound exposed, but it was also liberating. With every word, she felt layers of herself start to unravel and reveal something fresh, something real. As she spoke, visceral memories shifted into focus, moments of uncertainty that had defined her. The laughter of friends, the sting of criticism, the quiet triumphs that felt overshadowed by her relentless self-doubt. With each recollection, the audience seemed to draw closer, captivated not by a plot, but by her willingness to be seen. They leaned in, rapt. The initial fog of anxiety began to lift, revealing a shared sense of struggle in their eyes. Sarah pressed on, allowing fragments of her journey to spill forth, unfiltered and true. "I've questioned my worth for so long," she confessed, her voice growing steadier with each admission. "Have you ever felt like you were pretending to be someone else while hiding behind a mask? I know I have." Somewhere in the midst of vulnerability, Sarah caught sight of Daniel. His eyes shimmered with pride, his supportive presence a beacon amidst the vulnerability she was now embracing. This was not merely a performance, it was an offering, an invitation for everyone to reflect on their own stories. As the minutes passed, an invigorating shift occurred. The fear that had gripped her heart transformed into empowerment, and she began to challenge not only her own limitations, but those that every person in that cafe may have felt. Every one of us has a narrative that deserves to be heard. It's time we scrapped the perfectionism and embraced our imperfections. The audience erupted into applause, an unexpected wave of energy rushing toward her, wrapping her in a cocoon of acceptance. It was in that moment she realized vulnerability didn't expose her to scorn. It connected her deeply to those around her. The potential dive into criticism dissipated, replaced by a collective realization that no one was truly alone. As she wound down, a thought ignited, providing another layer to this burgeoning sense of self-discovery. She unearthed her passion for storytelling, not just for outlining abstract plots, but for carving out spaces where others could recognize their voices in her journey. Storytelling is not just art, it's a bridge. It allows us to traverse our fears and find common ground. But just as she felt the final mixture of adrenaline and accomplishment settle into a serene balm of satisfaction, an unexpected voice broke through the applause, piercing her newfound confidence like a shard of ice. "But Sarah, what about the expectations you're never able to meet? How do you confront those?" The voice echoed from somewhere deep in the crowd, a faceless reminder of her struggle that clawed back at her just when she had begun to soar. It unsettled her, left her reeling at the prospect of tackling those haunting expectations head-on. It was the perfect challenge, a testing ground for her newfound resolve. And so, with her heart racing anew and a mind ablaze with possibilities, she responded, "That's the beauty of this journey, isn't it? Perhaps there's always a battle to face. The challenge is finding the courage to confront it." As she stepped down from the stage, adrenaline still coursing through her, Sarah knew her journey didn't end here. Questions lingered, shadows of doubt still lurking in the corners of her mind. Could she continue to harness this power? What lay ahead now that she had opened herself so completely? Determined to explore those uncharted waters of personal growth, she felt a surge of urgency to uncover even deeper truths. What would come next? A confrontation with her expectations, or perhaps a quest to transform her vulnerability into strength. Only time would tell, and with that uncertainty hung in the air, Sarah steeled herself for the next chapter of her descent into the unknown. The days after the live session felt surreal, woven with threads of exhilaration and a bittersweet touch of trepidation. Sarah began to see her ideas spill over into reality, and inspiration cracked open the door to her creativity in ways she never thought possible. The cafe sessions with Daniel transformed into a vibrant workshop, where their ambitions fused. Every meeting was a step deeper into her awakening, a journey of self-discovery that morphed into a satisfying exploration of her identity as a writer. Each interaction sparked new wisdom. Building her character's resilience not only illuminated insights for her story, but mirrored her own unfolding strength. As she parsed through feedback from their live sessions, comments that echoed from both supporters and critics, she learned to embrace constructive criticism instead of shying away from it. Clarity replaced uncertainty, and a robust confidence gradually took root within her. The day Sarah received her first positive responses to her stories was monumental. A local children's bookstore invited her to host a reading of her work, opportunities she would have deemed impossible just months prior. Her character, once a mere reflection of her own struggles, now resonated with parents and children alike, igniting conversations filled with empathy and understanding. The warmth of connection through storytelling became a balm for her previously bruised spirit. In this transformation, Sarah warriored through her doubts. Each milestone celebrated marked her commitment to cultivate a life rich with purpose beyond mere survival. She began to query options for publishing her stories, grappling with the realities of the industry, but fortified by the supportive critique she received from readers. The fragile yet unyielding bridge between her feelings of inadequacy and the strength drawn from vulnerability had birthed something tangible and powerful. One evening, engrossed in drafting promotional material for an upcoming storytime event, a familiar voice chimed. "Sarah," Daniel's tone was casually encouraging, "your journey amazes me. Each step you're taking seems to build on the last, like a solid structure coming into view." "You're right. It's starting to take shape," she replied, surprise lacing her voice. He had become her partner not just in crafting stories, but in reimagining her life. Together they had combined their ideas, fusing creativity and strategy, and she found freedom in sharing her aspirations with him. But one conversation led her to a point she had long avoided. "What's our next step?" she asked him, an undertone of resolve threading through her anticipation. Daniel's gaze softened, reflecting a melange of pride and seriousness. "We need to solidify your vision into something tangible, with your name attached. It's time to reach out to publishing houses directly." Are you sure I'm ready for that? She hesitated, the familiar tension creeping back in, the shadow of doubt she had fought so hard to confront. Absolutely. Remember what you told the audience? It's about facing challenges head-on. This is your next leap, he stated unequivocally, allowing her to reclaim the power she'd so recently discovered. The exchange resonated within her, lightly brushing aside the fears she had so skillfully built around her aspirations. She felt they had woven a partnership rich with shared courage, and that intertwined trust lent her both comfort and incentive to step outside her confines yet again. Driven by renewed purpose, Sarah drafted her submission letters, her fingers gliding across the keyboard with fluid intent. Never in her life had she felt more aligned, the purpose stitched into her words igniting confidence that had once eluded her. With each query sent, Sarah accomplished a feat once inconceivable. She was no longer merely dreaming, she was actively constructing her future. The feedback might have begun trickling in, but for the first time, rejections no longer paralyzed her. Each one became an affirmation of her journey, a reinforcement that involved growing pains, but also progress. Even the greatest authors faced countless rejections before finding their voice, she would remind herself on those difficult days, finding solace not solely in the power to write, but in the act itself, a narrative she controlled and defined. As months rolled forward, tangible rewards sparked new energy in her efforts. Publishers began to express interest, and Sarah awoke to the realization that she was indeed shaping her destiny, a far cry from the weight of unassuredness that had once governed her existence. The culmination of her journey had transformed her from a tired waitress, clad in exhaustion, into a recognized figure in her community, confident in articulating her truth. The day she signed her publishing contract arrived with a feeling that reverberated in her core. It was no longer just a dream. She took a moment to contemplate the path she had walked. Each hardship, every moment spent sharing her stories encapsulated into this single defining moment. That previously dim light of possibility had ignited into a brilliant, unshakable flame. After signing, Sarah stepped outside, inhaling the brisk air filled with potential. Gratitude washed over her for Daniel, whose steadfast support had custom-crafted this avenue of growth, lifting her beyond her earlier limitations. As she turned to thank him, a new vulnerability emerged. "You helped me believe in myself," she confessed, her tone both reflective and resolute. Daniel smiled. "You achieved that all on your own, Sarah. I merely highlighted the brilliance that was always within you." And with that, she surrendered to the clarity of who she had become. A courageous mother, a resilient storyteller, and now a published author, ready to infuse her characters' adventures with the same hope that she had clung to through her journey. The story of Sarah was not over. In fact, it was only just beginning, a narrative she was willing to face wholeheartedly. Now leaning into her joys, challenges, and newfound confidence, Sarah was equipped to embrace whatever came next. She had not just conquered her fears. She had learned to thrive within them, transforming each moment into stepping stones, unearthing possibility at every turn. Sarah finished her triumphant stroll, noting the glimmer of ambition in her eyes. As she reached Jake, whose world was now a confluence of dreams and realities, she committed anew, to create, to deliver, and to live something extraordinary. Each new day was an opportunity, a blank page waiting to be filled with her unyielding spirit. If you've been inspired by Sarah's journey of triumph and transformation, you need to subscribe now to our channel. This is the moment to show your support by clicking the bell for all notifications so you never miss another exhilarating story like this. Leave a like now to help us reach others who need to hear these empowering tales. And don't just keep it to yourself. Comment below with your reactions and theories, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who crave tales of personal overcoming. Let's spread these powerful narratives far and wide, because together we can ignite countless journeys of transformation. Don't wait even one more second to be part of this community.